Hey guys, welcome back to METC 107. This is our week 15 video. I don't have a whole lot for you, but just a little bit of info about finishing up the semester and prepping for your final exam next week. So a couple of topics and things you want to know about the final exam will be in this video. Before we do that, I do want to remind you that your final project is due. So make sure that you have turned in your final project, preferably already, as I'm turning this video on Monday, but if you forgot, get it in there, get it uploaded. I want to make sure I get everybody's final project if they have completed one. So this week you should have your final project done and turned in, hopefully. So at this point, your only thing left to do would be to study for the final exam. Now, to talk about the final exam, your final exam is going to be open book because we're doing it, on your own at home through the internet. That doesn't mean you shouldn't study. So you want to go back and kind of refresh on some stuff and maybe brush up on a couple of things that maybe it's been a while since we've talked about. So there are a couple of things that you definitely want to focus on as you kind of prepare and go back and just remind yourself of some things as you get ready for the final exam. You definitely want to go back to week 10. So if you go back to week 10, this is the week where we talked about fasteners. So threads, fastening methods. We talked about bonding and forming, mechanical fasteners. So you want to go back and probably look through this PowerPoint or maybe watch that lecture video again. You also want to go in there and study up on the different types of bearings. That's something you might see in the final exam. So definitely go back and remind yourself of the week 10 information. Most of the multiple choice fill in the blank true false type questions at the beginning of the test come from the week 10 stuff. So you definitely want to go back and review fastening methods. That's probably one of the more important things we've talked about in the second half of this class. You also want to make sure that you're good at assembling inventor models. And by that I mean taking your multiple part files and putting them together into an assembly file or a .iam. So, we're talking about the idea here of after you've made several part files, IPTs, how do you take those and put them together into an assembly to make something? So make sure you go back and kind of refresh on the week 11 material. So you can go back, watch that video again. You could even work through the homework again if you wanted, or just watch part of the homework assignment just to kind of refresh yourself on some of those different constraints when you take assembly models and put them together. Where we're talking about mate constraints, flush constraints, the insert constraint, maybe even an angle constraint. But it's all about taking those 3D IPT files, putting them into that assembly environment, and attaching them together in the orientation that you want. So make sure you know how to build an assembly. There will probably be a question on the test where I give you part files that are already done and you have to assemble them together. And then also, after you make that assembly, make sure you know how to do exploded assembly drawings and assembly drawings in general. So that's going to be the week 13 video. So how do you take that and make your assembly drawing that shows all the pieces in the assembly and has the note bubbles that point to them with the bill of materials that tells all the pieces that go into the assembly. And then, of course, you want to know how to make drawing pages also. So that kind of goes back to our stuff from the first half of the semester. So how do you take your part files or your assembly files and put them onto a drawing page? So kind of finishing up here, next week we're going to do our final exam. So a little bit of info about it. It's 100 points. There is no time limit on it other than you have to get it done by the end of the week. So anything that you guys want to turn in, if you have late work that you haven't turned in yet, or for the finishing of your final exam, exam week is really the 11th through the 15th. So I'm going to give you guys that whole week to do the final exam if you need to. I'll turn it on Monday morning at 12:01 a.m. So it will be on very first thing Monday morning. I'll have Ivy Learn automatically turn it on by the calendar, and then it will automatically turn off on Friday night at 11:59 p.m. So you have basically that whole week to get in there at some point and get your final exam done. So make sure that you set a time for yourself during that week of the 11th through the 15th where you can get in there and pick a time at, I'm guessing it'll take you maybe 2 hours up to 3 if you work a little bit slower. So carve out some time where you can sit down without distractions and work through that final exam. Now you can, if you need to, save it and come back to it. So if you want to work on it like at a half hour at a time, you could do that. But it does need to be completed by Friday night, May 15th at 11:59 p.m. So make sure you kind of keep that in the back of your mind, because we have to have grades turned in pretty quickly at the end of the semester. So make sure you have it done before Friday night. Okay. So it is 100 points. It's got to be done by Friday night at 11:59 p.m. A couple of the questions I'm going to give you guys files for. So you'll see those. I've got this kind of built out already. You guys will get in there and it'll give you files, like starting files that I made for a couple of these questions. So you can get in there and access those also. And then finally, when you take the test, it is going to be partly graded by the computer, but I'm going to have to go back and manually grade a lot of it. So when you take the test, if you submit it and it tells you got a really bad score, don't panic. It's probably just the computer or Ivy Learn trying to automatically grade certain questions that it doesn't know the answer to, or maybe it just incorrectly grades them. So I will still go back and check every single exam, every question on every exam, to make sure that it's graded correctly. So if you get done and it tells you got like a 28%, just ignore it. I'll go back and regrade every test and make sure that every score on every question gets corrected. So that's really all I've got for you on this week. Spend some time practicing, brushing up. I will tell you, if you need some practice resources, I'm going to link a couple of just practice models into week 15. They are not required. They're not extra credit. They're not required, but it's just some good stuff if you want something new to practice to kind of brush up for the final exam. I'm just going to put some practice models in here and some practice videos or like tutorials that I found on the internet that I kind of like, that if you guys just want to spend maybe 20 or 30 minutes this week and just practice a model like as a walkthrough, I'll link that in. A couple of them may be for me, like from old classes that I've taught in the past. A couple of them may be just other people on the internet that I like their videos and I think they do a good job, and I'll give you those as well. So again, they are not required. They're not an assignment. They're not extra credit. It's just for you to use if you want to practice for the final exam. So that's all I got for you guys this week. Do some of the practice videos that I'm going to put in there here in just a minute. And if you have any questions before the final exam, as always, you can email me or call me, jhamilton83 at ivtech.edu, and my phone is 317-917-5916. So good luck. Spend some time studying and practicing this week, and I will see you guys next week. I will make a short video kind of walking through the exam of what you need to do, but I'll see you next week in week 16, our final week, for our final exam video. See you then.